Start.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Sonia Kaur Bansal and welcome to Gandhia School of Education in Suresh Gandhia University. And today's topic is about research data interpretation. As you all know, students, that after completing your research, its findings will be very important for the future generations. And in future generation, we not only include the students, but also we include the management, administration, teachers, students, staff, and parents as well. So when the findings are so much of importance, then why not its interpretation must be done in a very good way. So let's understand today's topic, research data interpretation. And today's my learning objectives are just to make you understand about research data interpretation, what it is and how it is very much important, and how the data interpretation is done, what are the different methods of doing the data interpretation, and what are the principles. And after studying all these concepts, we will be doing some MCQs also. So let's start today's topic. Now, before starting it, first of all, a very beautiful definition is on your screen. All meanings we know depend on the key of interpretation. It is given by George Eliot. So students, it is very important that we must interpret the things in a proper way to give the proper meaning of anything, of any concept, of any research, what you have done. So your meaning, what will be conveyed, will be very effective and efficiently used by the people when it is actually interpreted in a very proper way. So it is right, all meanings we know depend on the key of interpretation. So George Eliot says the right words, and I hope all of you will remember these words in a very application mode. Now let's understand, students. Data analysis is defined as a process of cleaning, transforming, and modeling data to discover useful information for business decision making. Whatever the purpose is of your research, you have to make it very clear while you are actually giving the interpretation to your data. Once you have decided very good tools, and then you have applied the tools on the proposed sample, what you have decided earlier, then you just receive a data in a very scattered form. Then you give a statistical treatment to your data, and then you receive some results. But the results are only in number form or maybe in the quantitative form, and for that purpose, you have to be very clear with the interpretation. Only then meaning will be clear. This is about quantitative type. But along with that, maybe you are not having data in numerical form. You are not having any set numbers for your results. Maybe it is based on some sort of observation or interview. Then even in that case, what you have observed, what you have realized, and how it is going to work, that is mainly focused in interpretation. So the purpose of data analysis is to extract useful information from data and taking the decision based upon the data analysis. Now, data analysis process, the data analysis process is nothing, students, but gathering information by using a proper application or tool in which allows you to explore the data and find a pattern in it. So just try to understand that when you are talking about data interpretation, so it is based on meaningful analysis, based on the information and based on the data that you have received. So you can make decisions or you can get ultimate conclusions based upon that. But for that, you have to make the interpretation in a very fruitful way. All right. So now let's understand, students, that data analysis consists of the following phases. How the data is analyzed. So first of all, data requirement gathering. This is the first phase, that when whatever your purpose of collecting the data from a particular sample, particular population, you are collecting it. You're putting up your questionnaire, maybe your checklist, or any other tool that you have decided for your research purpose. So it is important, students, to collect your data, to gather your data in a very systematic way. Step-by-step process should be followed in that. The next is data collection. Collection process is actually requires a very good part of hard work from a researcher. Now, this is the third part, that is the third phase, data cleaning. Data cleaning means, students, that suppose you want to collect the 50 number of any research data, but randomly you have collected 70, and out of them 50 are very important, and you will just remove or eliminate 20 data from that set of data collection, which are not properly filled, where the respondents have not given the proper answers. So this is something that you will be cleaning, and you will be just proceeding towards a process where this data is actually fine enough to draw the results. All right. Now, next phase comes data analysis, which I'm talking about it. So data analysis means now you are giving some formulas, computerization, statistical treatment to your data, what you have collected. Because raw scores won't be able to give you any findings. And through raw scores, you won't be able to draw the results, what is actually required from research point of view. So data analysis actually tells you to be more computerized, more statistical in your form of doing the research. Now here comes the data interpretation part, which we are going to talk today. And data interpretation is such a part that it actually becomes an art from the part of researcher. That if you are not doing the proper interpretation of your collected data, then you cannot think, students, that you have collected a good data, or maybe you have done a good research. You cannot say it in a very determined way. So data interpretation is very, very important art which a researcher must understand. Now, one thing I want to quote here, that whenever the researchers are good in their writing skills or in their speaking skills, they do better data interpretation. But those here, I'm just combining some psychological point behind that, that those who speak more and those who write well, they can write the interpretation through with the help of their imagination and creativity of thoughts. But those who are little of reserved nature and little composed nature, and they do speak less or they do write less, but they understand well. So this is the problem, basic problem, students, when the interpretation actually becomes little biased on that side. So it might not be very clear from that point of view. So I always tell my students to become expressive in your thoughts. Your expressiveness of thoughts will help you in interpretation of your data. Because why a variable is significantly related to another variable, that needs your own words, own interpretation, own meaning, own perspective, what you have understood. So It is very important to be expressive if you want to be good in interpretation styles. All right. Then data visualization. This is the beautiful term visualization, because when I'm visualizing about the significance of my variables, only then I'm going to interpret the data in a beautiful way. Now, students, let's understand what we are going to understand today, data interpretation. So, first of all of you understand that it is a process. And process is something which follows the steps, one after another. Okay. So, data interpretation is the process of reviewing data through some predefined processes or steps, I would say, which will help assign some meaning to the data and arrive at a relevant conclusion. So after collecting my data, I have just analyzed it. I have just taken out mean, mode, median, SD, or any t-test or f-test, ANOVA, whatever was required with my data. But now I'm in the process of interpretation. So why I'm in the process of interpretation? Simply understandable that it will help me in assigning some meaning to that collected data, and I will be able to arrive on the conclusion which will be relevant to my research. If the research is done in true sense, students, then the researcher would be very, very happy after doing the interpretation of data in his or her own words. So it involves taking the result of data analysis. Data analysis is the process of ordering, how you have ordered one thing after the another. Categorize category A, category B, C, for example. Manipulating. You have to be manipulative while doing your research. Sometimes it is maybe due to the type of error that is occurring in data collection. And then summarizing data to obtain answers to research questions. So students, it is usually the first step taken towards data interpretation. It is evident that the interpretation of data is very important and as such needs to be done properly. Therefore, researchers have identified some data interpretation methods to aid this process. All right. To sum up this presentation, I just would like to say this slide that data interpretation is a process, students. Number one, remember this, it's a process. And in process, we are going to follow steps 1, 2, 3, 4. Second thing you have to remember from this slide, that data interpretation will help you in giving meaning to your data. Third thing, it will help you in arriving the relevant conclusions. And then fourth, very important thing, that this is a process of ordering, categorizing, manipulating, and summarizing data to obtain answers to research questions. So this is about data interpretation in this slide. Now, students, let's talk about data interpretation method. So data interpretation methods are how analysts help people make sense of numerical data that has been collected, analyzed, presented. All right. So I had told you that once you have collected your data and it is in the form of raw scores, you have just scattered numbers with you, a large sample and large numerical data. How you are going to give the meaning to it? So interpretation will give you very good assistance in that. So the data when collected in raw form may be difficult for the layman to understand. We cannot understand. Maybe the researcher is understanding while doing the research steps. But a simple man, common man cannot understand that numerical presentation or such a huge where the sample size may be more than 500 or maybe more than 700-800. So it is not easy to understand. So that is why analysts need to break down the information gathered so that others can make sense of it. Your research work will be useful for others only if you are going to interpret the things in a very good way. Okay, so for examples, when founders are pitching to potential investors, they must interpret the data, market size, growth rate, etc. For better understanding, there are two main methods in which this can be done, namely quantitative methods and qualitative methods. So there are two types of methods, quantitative and qualitative methods, and we are going to understand them one by one what they are. So let's understand, students. Now we are talking about principles of data analysis and interpretation. I have told you in my earlier lectures also what is data analysis and interpretation. So just understand, data as used in behavioral research means research results from which inferences are drawn, conclusions are drawn. That is data. Usually numerical results like scores of tests, statistics such as means, percentages, correlations, coefficients are used. So if your data which is not meaningful to draw the results is not data. Your data should be used in behavioral research. It should be useful in that way. Okay. Now let's talk about analysis. So analysis means, students, the categorizing, ordering, manipulating and summarizing of data to obtain answers to research questions. Now understand, students, in that way that analysis of something means that you are putting up your data into category. That means if you have just gathered a data from a particular sample, now you are categorizing it into male, female, or maybe rural, urban. So these are the types that you are actually giving categories. Maybe married, unmarried, working, non-working. So you are going to categorize and then you are manipulating that in that way and then summarizing the data to obtain answers to research questions. Every researcher decides his research questions in the beginning of the research, why he or she is doing the research work. So at the time of analysis, the research questions are actually kept in mind and accordingly interpretation is done. What was my objective for doing this investigation? What was my purpose for that? So I will be taking care of all these things. Now let's understand the term interpretation. These are the terms, students, that you have to understand before understanding anything else. So interpretation takes the results of analysis, makes inferences pertinent to the research relations studied and draws conclusions about these relationships. So it is giving meaning and in some paragraph form you are just writing conclusions. Now methods of data interpretation, we are going to discuss about it. What are the different methods that researcher must use while doing the data interpretation? So first of all, direct visual observation of raw data. Just sometimes it happens that, students, that you are looking at your data and you are easily understanding, okay, now the difference is arising what I was thinking of earlier. So this is some visual thing that an investigator is observing, the raw data. And these numerical types, the numbers will actually give you a tentative idea that, okay, this is the result I'm going to receive. After organizing the data in tables, that it's very important that data must be organized in a table. So this is another method. After taking the t test, we have to just give the significant number, and then we have to give what is the mean SD of that particular data. So for that, showing in a particular way, in an effective way, the data is organized in tables. Then after making graphical presentations, after calculations using numerical statistical methods, graph really help us to make the data in a very effective way to present the things. So graphical representation is always to the point. Anyone can see your graphs and just make the idea what are your interpretation and what is your result of your research. So after mathematical modeling, mathematical thing is not everyone's cup of tea, so we have to take the help of computer also. Now data. Data is known to be crude information and not knowledge by itself. It's an information, not a knowledge. Just understand the difference. So when we are having information, so you have to remember that what is the data by that time. The sequence from data to knowledge is how the data and knowledge just cover their path. First, data proceeds to information, and then from information to facts, and then finally from facts to knowledge. I hope you are understanding well that data is not itself a knowledge, but data is data leads to information. Then information leads to particular facts. Okay, this is right and this is wrong. This is happening in some cases and this is not happening in some cases. So these are the facts. And when we are seeking for knowledge, these facts convert into knowledge. So just understand it in that way. Data becomes information when it becomes relevant to your decision problem. Whatever the problem you have taken, if it is a research problem, I basically mean by that. So whatever the research problem you have taken, if your data is relevant with that, it is a useful piece of information for the investigator. Now, information becomes fact when the data can support it. So just try to understand, students, that when you are doing research and when you have collected your data, if your data is still relevant to your research problem, then this research problem, then this type of data is becoming information. And it is becoming fact if it is supporting that research. So facts are what the data reveals, how the different numbers are reacting, how they are conveying their meaning to you. It is about facts. So data is revealing the facts itself. However, the decisive instrumental applied knowledge is expressed together with some statistical degree of confidence. So it is very important, students, to understand that knowledge is expressed together with some statistical degree of confidence, that you have to show that confidence in interpretation of your data. Fact becomes knowledge when it is needed in the successful completion of a decision process. Massive amount of facts are integrated as knowledge. So just remember. So when you are proceeding towards the data you have seen, so just remember they are not the knowledge itself, they are just piece of information. Okay, and this piece of information will convert fact into fact when it is relevant to your own data. Okay, and this fact will convert into knowledge when the facts are integrated. So this is the successful completion of decision process which your data is enabling you to be a very good researcher. Now you can understand it grammatically. Data proceeds towards information, information towards facts, and facts towards knowledge. Level of exactness of statistical model, level of improvement on decision making. So how it is working all together, you can see through this diagram. I hope it is clear to you. Now see, understand some basic things which are related to data interpretation. Usefulness and utility of research findings, students, lie in proper interpretation. You have done so much hard work in your research. You have just visited so many places to collect your data. You have gathered data, you have gathered information. But until unless you don't give it a meaning, then it is useless. So proper interpretation must be done. Now, interpretation is a basic component of research, students. Everyone must understand it, that this is a basic component. After collecting and analyzing the data, the researcher has to accomplish the task of drawing conclusions, inferences, followed by report writing. When we write the report, so our own conclusions must be ready. What the research questions are actually forcing us to find. So whatever we have find, we have to give them meaningful writing, and that writing part is called interpretation. This has to be done very carefully, otherwise misconclusions may be drawn and the whole purpose of doing research may be get vitiated. So it is only through interpretation that the researcher can expose relations and processes that underlie his findings. So it's really very useful. Now, meaning of interpretation, let's see it in a very elaborated way. Interpretation refers to the task of drawing inferences from the collected facts after an analytical and or experimental study. So, in fact, students, it is a search for broader meaning of research findings. Maybe you have done the research calculations with the help of computer, and computer is just giving you the numbers. But I told you, maybe you are interviewing someone or you are observing someone or something or a particular situation. Then it is your task, the researcher's task, to give the findings in a proper meaning. So that is the importance of interpretation, meaning of interpretation. The task of interpretation has two major aspects. The effort to establish continuity in research through linking the results of a given study with those of another. You are continuously linking your research with another researches which have already been done in that particular area. So, establishment of some explanation concepts will help that purpose in a very nice way. Now, in one sense, interpretation is concerned with relationship within the collected data, partially overlapping analysis. Interpretation also extends beyond the data of the study to inch the results of other research, theory, and hypothesis. So, just understand, students, that whatever is your data, it is giving you the opportunity that with the help of that collected data, you give interpretation to your study and you just shift your results to next generations, to upcoming students who are interested in doing the research. So we can say that interpretation is the device, students. It is the device, how it is done. So when I'm talking about interpretation, why I'm calling it a device, just understand it first. What is device? So device is something, students, that you are taking a help to explain something, to give a meaning to your research. So interpretation is the device through which the factors that seem to explain what has been observed by researcher in the course of the study can be better understood, and it also provides a theoretical conception which can serve as a guide for further researches. Now let's understand it here that what I mean by theoretical conception. Theoretical conception is something that when students, you are having something in a theory form and you're receiving the idea. So this is interpretation is doing that what and how you have done the interpretation with the help of your data collected. Now these are some references, students, and now we are going to discuss about some MCQs. Now let's understand which are the type of tables in data processing. So there are simple tables. We had discussed about it that we have to frame a table. We have to frame a table when we are going to systematize or order our collected data. So simple table, complex or cross table. There are different types of tables. So in the answer would be both A and B. Simple tables are also there. Complex cross table is also there. Okay. Now, next question is related to following are parts in the tabulation of data. So just find out which are the parts of in the tabulation of data. Title of the table, subheadings, arrangement of items in rows and columns, size and demarcation of column, footnotes. What are the different parts of tabulation of data? So of course the answer is all of the above. Now understand, students, in that way that when we are having 5 to 6 chapters in our thesis or research report, then there are number of tables in our research report. So whatever the table we have chosen at the first number, you have to give that proper title. Title is must. What your table is showing, in which variables it is showing the difference or not. So you just understand it in that way. So title of the table must be clear, and along with that number must be clear. Arrangement of items in rows and columns, it must be clear, like serial number. And then if you have given codes for your independent or independent variables, then it must be shown in the table. Like suppose for example, you have chosen 2 universities to study, government universities and private universities. And for research purpose and writing purpose, if I'm not writing throughout in my research government and private and again, maybe I'm giving code to it. Maybe I'm giving code A to government universities, code B to private universities. So in that case, I will be doing the coding thing. So give your codes properly in rows and columns, and then give proper subheadings, and then a beautiful table will be there to understand. Then your data will be easily understandable by the readers or the externals. Size, demarcation must be very clear of column. It should not be like it is more and more at left side or right side, or maybe the margin is not proper. So the content is not in the middle. Some in one cell it is in middle, and in another column, another row, it is in between and at the lower side. So just try to make it in a symmetrical form. Table should be in that way, and more and more ideas to frame good tables, like you just bold the heading parts. You may give the color of to it, or different colors can be used. So it is about more and more you are doing to your table, is it is more and more understandable with research work. Okay, students. Now third question is about after the data has been processed and analyzed, the research process requires. Yes, we have discussed it very well. Interpretation of data, presentation of data, reporting of data, and testing of data. So I again repeat, students, that testing, reporting, and presentation, these parts are done beforehand, before processing and analyzing of data. But the correct answer is interpretation of data, that is done after processing and analyzing of data. By processing, I mean administering the test to your sample. Just process. Just bring it into process. And when you have collected the data from your sample, just arrange them, which will include the analysis part. Arrange them in a systematic order. Maybe it is alphabetically or any other numerical form which you want to give to your data. Then make proper categories. Categories are very, very important before doing the interpretation. So the research process requires interpretation of data. Okay, students? But the presentation of data is something else, reporting of data is something else, and testing of data is something else. So it is done before processing and analyzing. So just make it clear in your minds that the interpretation of data is done after all these steps are completed and our data is processed and cleaned up and analyzed. Now I'm going to interpret my data happily to find out my conclusions, to draw out my conclusions. Next questions we are going to see. Question number 4. Under descriptive analysis, statistical tools used are descriptive analysis. Understand, students, what is descriptive analysis? Descriptive analysis is used when you are actually giving the results of your variables in a describing way, in a descriptive way. So when you have to draw the percentage, then calculus, percentage, mean, so only and A and B, only B and C. So percentage and mean is important under descriptive analysis of statistical tool. Okay, students? Now, next question is highlight the statistical tools that are available to a researcher in the research process. Now, we focus on highlighting the statistical tools that are available to a researcher in the research process. So, what are the statistical tools? Measures of central tendency, which we have studied, mean, mode, median, standard deviation, we have all studied about it. Measures of dispersion, how we see that our data or the numbers are dispersed, in what way. Measures of asymmetry, how much asymmetry is there in having the data. Measures of relationship. So, of course, the answer is all of the above when we are talking about highlighting the statistical tools that are available to a researcher in the research process. All right, students? So, measures of central tendency, measures of dispersion, measures of asymmetry, measures of relationship, all are the answers suitable for these questions. Now understand, students, data processing involves the following steps: editing, coding, classification, tabulation, all of the above. Yes, the correct answer is all of the above. But before you understand this, why it is correct, so let me make it clear to you. Students, we are talking about data processing. What is data processing? Just understand. You have decided your topic in the beginning of the research. You are clear that on these variables I am going to research. You have research questions in your mind. And with your research questions, now you proceed as what you are going to find out with your data. You select some tools to collect the data. You select sample to collect your data. And why I'm gathering data? Because I want to have an answer of my research question. Why particular variable is affecting the other variable? I want to have an answer of it. So when after just selecting a proper tool, you have collected the data and you are going towards the collection of data. When your whole data is collected in the form of questionnaire, or maybe nowadays Google Forms are there to collect the data also. So there are many ways to collect the data. So after collecting data, you have everything in number form, numerical form. So in that case, how you are going to give interpretation to it? Now, for that purpose, you have to follow beforehand first step, that is processing. And when we do the process, definitely students, it includes some steps as I have told you earlier. So steps are something that first of all you do editing. And now what is editing? Editing is something, students, where you actually keep the important data with you and you just eliminate the irrelevant, unimportant data outside. You just exclude that. A good researcher always tries to collect the data in a good number, and the data is collected in a good number, maybe in some extra number, because respondents sometimes do not fill the full questionnaire. Then by that time, if they are on filling only 5 to 10 questions out of 30, then it is not useful for you. So in that case, you will eliminate that questionnaire from your data storage. So this is called editing. Editing is not only eliminating, it is only also about editing. Maybe you want to collect 50 sample data and now 49 are only correct and there is one less, or maybe 2 or 5 or more than that less. So in that case, what you are going to do? Editing you are going to do, you are going to collect some more data and then you are adding it in your already collected data. So this is about editing. Now coding. Coding is something, students, that a researcher is happily giving, or by his own choice, her own choice, the researcher is giving coding to his variables, to independent variables, dependent variables. So the researcher is giving that coding. Why coding is given? Just understand. It is not possible each and every time to repeat the data, to just tell the data again and again, tell the terms again and again. So for that purpose, as for gender, male and female, X and Y, we denote this coding. So this is something you are going to give to your variables for easy interpretation. Then students, next comes classification. Classification is something that now you are making categorizing of your data in a beautiful way by giving them numbers or by giving them some headings. So classification is easy. Classification is important as you want to get the specific results from specific set of data. How many females are doing this work? How many males are doing this work? How many children are affected by this? So this classification has to be done in a proper way. Then tabulation. Tabulation, as I have told you earlier, is a part and parcel of data processing. In tabulation, you are keeping your data and statistical treatment in the terms of mean, ST or T value. Like, for example, I'm just giving a tabulation and there can be many other tables also. So it is actually easily available to you. So this is all about all of when I'm talking. So all the steps are covered in data processing. All right, students. Now the next question is in a bar diagram. Each bar indicates the value of the variable. Bar diagrams are really a good thing to do with your data interpretation, and it really indicates the value of the variable, how long it has been affected in your research. So it is true. All right, students. So this is all about data interpretation and how the data interpretation is done, and how in what way the data interpretation is very, very useful for a new researcher and investigator, and how it works. We have seen various principles of interpreting the things. We have seen, we have established a very good difference between data analysis and interpretation. So students, just remember that data interpretation is a very good thing which is giving you the meaning of your research. And I hope all of you will remember George Eliot's words. If you want to give meaning to your research, you have to be very good in doing the interpretation of your words. All right, students. So take care, stay safe, stay healthy.